Hey,
Yeah. Okay, so we talked a lot about the speed of the 28 Chief and how successful that was. 29 comes along, and the Lockwood company said, "Well, we've got to maintain our leadership in at least Class B racing." And Class B was the biggest engine that Lockwood really had offered to the public. So they came out with this Racing Chief, this one over here. And the features are not too much different than a regular Chief.
this one, the Racing Chief had dual carburetors, did it
This
not?
one is supposed to have dual carbs. At some point in its life, they were eliminated.
And why do you think they were eliminated?
It was probably more trouble.
The dual carbs were a total pain in the rear end, from what my reading tells me.
Yeah, but not as much as you'd think.
Okay.
Because it's from a non, let's say, a person with, let's say, lesser mechanical aptitude would be intimidated by that. But the genius behind the Lockwood dual carbs are that they were progressive.
Okay.
So it ran on, and the carbs were mounted right directly on the cylinders.
Yeah.
Okay. It ran most of the time off one carb. And
Okay.
the linkage was like a bar with a latch on it. It was horizontal.
Okay.
And it worked from this type of throttle with the cable coming out in a different place and out to here.
Okay.
So how that worked is it would run on one carb until it was like 3/4 or 7/8.
So one cylinder was dead.
No, because they feed the same crankcase.
Ah, right. Absolutely, they do. Yeah. Okay.
And we're going to go into the details about even the regular Chief carb, how it only feeds one cylinder for a lot of its use. But I'll show you that in the.
Doesn't feed one cylinder.
Yeah, just one crankcase. you know,
One crankcase, because they've got a shared crankcase because they're a horizontally opposed engine.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay, so
That's an important point, by the way. A lot of people don't understand that.
a sidebar would be that if somebody had a dual carburetor setup, they could hike you up pretty good.
Maybe. All right. All right. Oh, but my wish is to find, of course, the carburetors are supposed to be on this, and it's not very likely that.
So was this one silent as well?
Oh yeah. So one would say, well, why didn't they? If they're making a special Racing Chief, why didn't they use the 28 lower unit without any of that? Why would they do that? Why would they do all this, and on a race engine? And my answer to that is that I think they were so proud of how good this exhaust worked. They said that it won't slow even a race engine down.
1929, 28, the Kale Owner's Manual for the Kale 30 Racer states in there that legislation was getting so hot that they had to run them with exhaust
Right.
in racing. And I think that also had something to do
It
with it.
probably has something to do with
Yeah.
it because in some places Sunday racing was banned altogether
Yes,
because of noise,
yes,
and that was in 28.
yes.
Yeah. So, okay, so we have this now Racing Chief with the dual carbs that are not here, a special tank, special oilers, and we're going to talk later about what those oilers actually did inside the engine. And they used a lighter flywheel taken from a Lockwood Ace, so the whole magneto is a Lockwood Ace
Oh, really?
magneto.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that thing on top looks like a
Oh, that's a
tachometer drive. Do you
tachometer
have the tachometer to go with that?
I have a tachometer that fits on that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And one of the disadvantages of this small rope plate.
So this let me just show that. There's the flywheel. Look at there, the red, and look how large that one is in
Right.
comparison. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that would give it a few more RPMs.
I don't know. To me, it's just aggravation for starting. It's
Really?
the most aggravating thing to start. With that small a pulley.
Why? Oh, okay, because the pulley's so small and
Yeah.
you don't have the leverage
No,
you
there's
need.
no leverage. It's horrible.
How
Horrible
about
thing.
the
I put
weight?
I put a Chief mag on this, but it won't clear the tank.
I got you.
You know, so it stays the way it is, and it's actually better.
So also your diameter of your flywheel would make the engine with less. It wouldn't typically wouldn't idle down as well
Right,
either.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that matters. It's a racing
It's a
engine,
race
so who
engine.
cares, you know?
Now, Lockwood came into 29 with this thing with great hopes, okay? But at the same time, Johnson came out with a Johnson SR45,
Which was
which is the
racing
racing
version
version
of
of this, okay?
that. And you also, in 1928, had the Evinrude Fast Twin, which was faster than the
But
Lockwood
there's
Chief.
no record of it anywhere.
Right, because it wasn't popular.
It wasn't used. I
Right.
think people
They
walked
wanted the
into
30
Evinrude
cubic inch.
dealer and bought a Speedy Twin. They
Yeah.
didn't buy those.
Right.
So anyway, this thing was doomed in that Johnson had a better product. It was much easier. The Johnson product was easier starting, easier to use,
And put out more horsepower.
and put out more horsepower.
Right.
Right.
I mean, that's the bottom line.
Right. So these really fell out of favor fast.
I mean, those 45, that S45 is a beast, but boy, it puts out wicked horsepower.
Right.
Low.
Now there's two other Class B size Lockwood products that we don't have examples of here that I can talk about briefly. In
Okay.
1930, they took this thing and they put electric starting on it. So they made electric starting Chiefs.
Really?
Yeah.
A little
And-
20 cubic inch electric
Yeah,
starting Chief.
Yes. Yep,
Really?
Yep. And
Huh.
basically,
Ever seen one?
oh yeah,
Have you?
yeah, it's a special crankcase with 4 mounting positions,
Okay.
and of course flywheel magneto comes off.
Okay.
This Owens Dinetto assembly goes on.
So it's a special crankcase, special flywheel, special.
Yeah, the flywheel becomes the armature of the starter, right? And then a different point plate, battery ignition, so it had a coil mounted up here like an
Okay.
Alto. And there's one
A what?
problem,
Like a who?
like an Alto, coil
Did
like
it
an
run?
Alto, like a battery ignition. Yeah, they run good. Right. So, the problem with the electric start, which was not compatible with this type of carburetor. So they made a special intake manifold that took a Tillotson carb. Like
So
on an Evinrude.
why would they have to have? Why wouldn't that one work with the electric start?
Because they couldn't figure out how to put a spark advance to the point plate up inside the starter.
Oh, okay.
So the Tillotson carb had a place on the side where there was a cable hookup, which would take this cable, but also had another place where cable went up inside the starter and worked the point plate. It was actually a nice feature because it would as you advance the throttle, it also advanced the spark. So it gave you really one lever.
But it was actually a Lockwood you're talking about, not an Alto or.
Well, it's that Owens Dinetto, which was the
Right.
same as what was used on the Alto Evinrude.
Who was Owens Dinetto? Were they a completely separate company?
Yeah, company in New York State.
Okay, and what else? Are they still in business or?
I don't know. Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not.
Is that all they made was just outboard starter motors?
No, they made products for the automotive industry.
Okay. All right. So this outboard starting business was kind of a sideline type of deal.
Yeah, I don't think it was their full,
Yeah.
full effort. And Jim Webb talks a lot about the troubles they had with that Owens Dinetto
Okay.
and troubles with heat. They said they tested them in the spring or something, or in the fall, and they worked quite well. But then the summer, when things got really hot, like in warmer climates, they broke down. They didn't hold up well. In heat
What didn't hold up
Well,
well?
they said windings, didn't
Okay.
hold up, and
Okay.
a lot of, like any electric motor has solder to the
Yes.
to the
Oh,
commutator.
got that kind of hot.
Yeah, those kinds of things.
Yeah, heat's a big issue still. It
Yeah, it
has
still
been
is,
with
right.
Mercury
Yeah,
Marine. They had
So they had lots of trouble with the electric starting, and according to Jim Webb, of course Lockwood was long gone. Jim Webb said that by the later 30s they had got it pretty good, so the electric starting really worked. But of course it was already, Lockwood was long gone. Johnson probably abandoned it at some point, and so OMC was just stuck with perfecting it. So the other product that also we don't have an example of is at some point OMC decided to drop the Lockwood name. 1930 was probably a pretty good Lockwood year. Now we're starting the effects of the Depression. OMC is saying, we've got to kind of look at our whole product line here and say, something's going to stay and something's going to go. And they decided to let the Lockwood product line go.
Very much like Johnson was let go back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, huh?
Why? It was the most
Started
popular
spinning off
engine
stuff.
by way far.
I know.
And they went to Evinrude.
Yes,
and
right.
Evinrude did its usual course of disaster
No,
right
you're
from
right.
the
The
day
Johnson
one.
name was the best name in outboards.
Right.
No
By
question.
far, yeah.
Well, there's probably some egos involved with that.
Well, I think this ego has a huge amount of to do.
Keeping Ole Evinrude's tradition alive, I think a lot of people,
But you look at the history of it, I mean, it's been sort of a disaster name in
Yeah.
some ways. I mean,
But they
it's
still
been
made a
changed
lot of
ownership
products.
3 or 4 or 5 times. And
Made products
Yeah.
that people liked. So what happened to Lockwood finally in the end is they became Sea Kings.
really,
This
okay.
became the Sea King 14 horse or whatever. And that lived, I think, it still appeared in the 1935 Sea King catalog.
Still the same design,
Same
pretty
thing,
much?
exact same
Okay,
thing, right.
all right. So that engine was made for a lot of years then.
It was made for a lot of years.
They worked it right till there was nothing
Yeah.
left of the molds and
Right.
machine tooling and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay. That's,
So-
that's interesting. I didn't know that. Sea King. So yeah, all right. I always thought that was one of the smarter things that OMC did. Briggs I admire greatly.
Yes.
I think he was a very smart man.
And
He
it's a
knew
good,
how to.
a good time. Let's talk about that. Okay, roll action and all that. So, March 1925, March 25th, 1929, Motorboating Magazine, the announcement of the merger. And the important thing about all this is, to me, and this goes back to, we're talking more like Lockwood history. So over here, okay, and I'll read it. The merger places Mr. Evinrude at the head of the two companies which he founded and one of his former competitors in the motor field. In 1928, the three concerns produced almost 50% of the outboard motors made in America. Now, that's a little bit inflated because we know that Johnson made more than 50%.
Yes, they did. They made
Okay.
almost twice 50%, from what I understand. But
Yeah,
that's
they made more than
that was
50%.
their claim, so.
And these guys with Steve Briggs kind of got involved and knew in order to compete with Johnson, he's got to make the organization bigger. So what it says here, and this is really important. In 1928, the three concerns produced almost 50% of the outboard motors made in America. Elto making nearly 11,000, okay? Evinrude, the same number, probably a little inflated, and Lockwood, 5,000. So, which might be a little inflated as well. So, estimated production in the entire industry in 1928 is 75,000, of which outboard motors plan to make about 40,000. So, I did a little bit of serial number collecting because I wanted to know how many Lockwood Chiefs were made. The number that I've come up with is not too different than the number they're talking about here. This is probably a little inflated, but I have my notebook. I'm going to have to go over here and get my notebook. Okay, and I keep like a little logbook. And for the conspiracy theorists, they're worried that if people collect serial numbers and take names, some robbers are going to come in the middle of the night and steal all their motors. So my little disclaimer when people give me serial numbers is I don't put their names there. And you can clearly see it.
All right.
No names. But I wanted the numbers. So basically, the 28 Lockwood, called the Model 82B, I've collected 15 numbers. And I've counted, in that range of numbers from the lowest to the highest, I've counted 2,035 motors.
Okay.
Okay. The B, which is 29, in the 20 numbers I've collected, the lowest to highest, gave me 2,638. And then the 92B, which might be late 39, that's a post-merger.
Like 29, not 39.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, sorry. I have only 6 of that, but that yielded 1,067 motors. So all together, you can see that when you add these up, it comes close to the total production, kind of where they wanted to be. Now this doesn't include ACE numbers as well. So between here we got probably almost 5,000 Chiefs made total in probably 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Plus the ACEs, you can get a pretty good idea that they probably made close to 5,000.
Okay.
And which is a pretty good number. So Lockwood being the weakest of the group, but was also a very popular brand, did go away at the end of 1930.
What I'm seeing here, in a way, is you could have a popular racing motor like Lockwood, definitely had attraction in the racing business, but the real market was not racing.
Oh, I know. Right.
So, I mean, this is kind of a surprise to me in a way, because I think I always thought that racing was kind of the market in 1928, 29, but it isn't.
Well, at that time, it was a growing market.
Yes.
All of a sudden, to get a boat that would plane, I think had a great attraction for people. Just like when jet skis first came out, all that stuff, it became very, very popular to be on some kind of a thing and go fast, right? And I think outboard industry early on was like that with fast motors.
Right. I mean, no argument about it, but it's just like I say, I would have thought that for some reason, having had a father that raced and an uncle that raced back in the 20s and 30s, I mean, they were part-time, very definitely not important figures, but they were very excited. So I always had this feeling that's where the sales were. But when you show me these figures right here, I kind of realized that, well, Lockwood was the racing motor in 1928 without a question. Whether it was the fastest or not, it's a whole nother question, but it was close. It was the motor to have.
Yeah.
But you're still talking pretty
we can talk
anemic
more
numbers
about that. So we're going to talk a little more about its